Check, 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 check. Check, check, check,
Yo, yo, yo. What up, y'all? It's Game Time Ty. We're here on a Tuesday, 5 p.m., 5:12 to be exact, September 5th. And we're about to go through some NFL news today, see what is popping off. It's been a pretty hectic weekend, I gotta say. Not just with NFL news, but in general. It was my birthday. Had a little family gathering, nothing too crazy. I'm getting older. I'm not going to say how old I am, but I'm definitely getting up there. So I wasn't trying to do any crazy partying. That said, me and my fiance flew out to Vegas that night. Did a little gambling, played a little craps, placed a couple bets, you know what I'm saying? Season long. A couple of them I'm hoping hit at least for the NFL. So we'll see what happens. But it was fun. It was fun. She went to Beyonce last night, so she probably, had a blast. Saw some videos from that. I didn't go. I don't appreciate Beyonce nearly enough to spend that much money on a ticket, but she definitely loved it. So that said, a lot of stuff happened over the weekend, NFL, and today, actually, within the NFL. So let's cover some stuff. Real quick, right off the bat. Looks like Casey Hayward, cornerback, was fully cleared from his pectoral injury and is ready to return to football. Sick. Other news, Arizona Cardinals QBs Joshua Dobbs and Clayton Tune were both listed atop the team's unofficial depth chart. That's just, it really doesn't matter who's playing. I think probably Joshua Dobbs will win that job. They traded for him, but at the same time, they're just tanking. I still firmly believe that. I still don't think we're going to see Kyler Murray step foot on the field for Carolina this year, or for the Arizona Cardinals this year. I really don't see that happening. That said, I guess I could be surprised. We'll see. Atlanta Falcons, they signed safety Lucas Dennis from the practice squad. Cool. Carolina Panthers signed wide receiver Desmond Patton. Okay. This one's some good news. Obviously, Bengals fans out there, fellow Bengals fans, really stoked to hear this. But if you drafted Joe Burrow, like I did in a couple of my leagues, and if you have him in any of your leagues, you're pretty happy to hear this as well. Quarterback Joe Burrow, calf, is trending towards starting in Sunday's season opener against the Browns. NFL insider Tom Pelissero reported. Thanks, Tom Pelissero. Remember, Burrow suffered that calf strain at the beginning of training camp and then returned to practice on August 30th, so like last week. But this is just positive news. We'll have to still monitor this. We're less than a week away now from the game, and he's still technically not cleared. So it's going to come down to a game time decision. And I've already made plans. I've got Jared Goff as my backup in one of my leagues with Joe Burrow. I think in the other one I have like Geno Smith or something like that. So if you have Joe Burrow and you don't have a backup yet that you can rely on, if you hear that for whatever reason he's not going to be playing this Sunday, because it's very, very possible, rather likely, I would say, just given the time that we have right now. I mean, it's saying that he's trending towards starting. I just wouldn't trust that 100%. So don't just go in willy-nilly and be like, all right, I'm just going to, set and forget Joe Burrow. No, you can't do that right now. Pay attention, have a backup plan, and if Joe Burrow's cleared, start him up. I mean, they're playing against the Browns. It's going to be a pretty exciting game. I don't know how high scoring it'll be. It's a division matchup. It's always scrappy between division matchups specifically in this division. That said, the offensive line did get a lot better, being the Bengals. So maybe Joe Burrow can cook even on a sort of limited calf. But we'll monitor this. They signed some guys. They cut some guys. We'll move on. Dallas Cowboys. Left guard Tyler Smith underwent an MRI Tuesday that confirmed he suffered a hamstring strain at Monday's practice. Jane Slater reported, "We felt better after we visited and assessed it after practice," Jerry Jones said earlier Tuesday. "Hopefully it's not serious enough to impact him Sunday night." Well, it's confirmed that it was a strain. They went so far as to get an MRI done. That doesn't make it seem like he's going to be super available for Sunday night. I don't know. Jerry Jones doesn't live in the real world, though, so maybe he knows something I don't. But that doesn't look good for the Cowboys. It doesn't look good for Tyler Smith, unfortunately. And even if he's playing on like a half, sort of 50% hamstring, I mean, that's not good. I mean, I don't know if anybody here has ever hurt their hamstring. I definitely have. And you can barely walk. It does, even if it's just a mild sprain or strain. So it just lingers for a while and you don't feel normal. It could affect how he moves, how he plays. He's probably going to be a little slower off the ball, or at least he'll be more susceptible to more agile defensive ends, people doing swim moves across him. He's not going to be able to reset his feet or make those lateral burst kind of adjustments as well that we know he's fully capable of doing. He's one of the best guards in the NFL. So, we hate to see it, but that's just something that, again, is hurting the Cowboys. And they need all the help they can get to start the season off strong, to be honest. Because Cowboys, they're one of those teams that, like, emotionally, I don't know if they can handle 3 losses to start their season. 3 back-to-back losses. I'm not saying, like, Tyler Smith's going to be out for 3 games, or even if that would impact their winning chances, but we take a look at their schedule. They got a pretty tough schedule, and plus they're in a tough division. Like, their division got better, surprisingly, last year. Like, every single team in that division got better, except for maybe you could say the Cowboys, arguably. But I mean, they added Brandon Cooks, they lost Zeke, maybe addition by subtraction there. He wasn't really that great. Their defense stayed about as good as it was last year. It was an all-pro defense last year. It was probably top 3 in the league. So, but like I said, that team has its work cut out for them. That division is pretty tough. Got better. So, moving on. Detroit Lions. Center Frank Ragnow did not practice Tuesday after being a full participant yesterday. So, they're resting his toe. Defensive tackle Isaiah Buggs' illness was a full participant. Okay. But he'll be a healthy scratch versus the Chiefs. Cornerback Emmanuel Mosley was limited, and then Ifitu Melifonwu was full participant. Okay. Takeaway there. It's good. Frank's going to come back. That's their center. Everything else is pretty standard. Nothing really jumps out at me there. Kansas City Chiefs. This is where a lot of stuff happened, and I'm sure folks out there have already heard the headlines. News came out and it spread like wildfire. If you follow any sports analysts or fantasy folks on any platform, they probably have already talked about this. But Travis Kelce hyperextended his knee today during practice, and his status for Thursday's opener versus the Lions is in doubt. So it's not expected to be a long-term injury per Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero, as he was listed as a limited participant today, but he hyperextended his knee today. It happened this morning. So we're talking about less than 48 hours, essentially, give or take, from this game starting. And my man's is talking about it not being a long-term injury, but his status for that game is fully in question now. Fully in question. Even Coach Reed, Andy Reid, was like, "Yeah, we don't know if we're gonna have Travis." Like, straight up, he had to tell that to reporters because he honestly does not know now. Have a backup, dude. I think it's pretty obvious at this point. If you've heard this by now, I hope this isn't the first time you're hearing of this. But regardless, this news is breaking today. It broke earlier today. So if this is your first time hearing this, please go run to your waiver wire. If you're a Travis Kelce owner, or if you're planning on drafting him, I don't even want to talk about drafts anymore because I feel like everybody's already drafted at this point. We're 2 days away from the season. So we're just looking forward as if everybody has drafted. So if you're that Travis Kelce owner, go pick up like a Kmet or Tyler Higbee if Tyler Higbee's still around, especially now with, the whole situation with Cooper Kupp, and they don't even know where all those targets are going to go. Cooper's not playing this week. Straight up. I'm just calling that right now. I don't know if that's officially been announced or not. I haven't seen any reports whether he was going to play or not, but he's just not going to play. I am fully 100% certain of that, especially with the report of him like going into seeing like a body specialist. So the point being, there are a couple options out there to replace Travis Kelce if he misses this week. And, I named a couple of them: Cole Kmet, Tyler Higbee. You might be able to say, if there's a Juwan Johnson out there still. I doubt an Njoku's around. Maybe a Tyler Conklin. So go check out your waiver wire for tight ends if you already haven't, because you're going to need to plug and play somebody this week. And my top two, Tyler Higbee is number one for me. Go get him. I've already got him in the league. I'd never draft Travis Kelce. I didn't. But just for the sake of the situation in LA with Cooper Kupp, and I don't trust Van Jefferson as the number one target there, I think they're going to lean more towards like a run heavy / tight end style offense where you might see a lot of dink and dunks and passes to the running backs out of the backfield, and also some like seam routes from Tyler Higbee down the field, cutting up this defense, this Seattle defense, which is notoriously bad against the tight end. So, and we'll look at the matchups from this week, and we can talk about kind of matchups for each team going into the week. But let's just finish up some news. So go get those tight ends. Seriously, just find them. Moving on, Tershawn Wharton practiced in full after being limited, so that's their defensive tackle. Pretty important. And then L'Jarius Sneed was limited. Looks like the Las Vegas Raiders signed Keelan Cole from the practice squad. That's interesting. Then they cut some guys, and looks like Los Angeles Rams cut some guys too. Same with Vikings, we're just going to gloss over these. Same with 49ers. Okay, same with Tampa Bay. And then looks like Washington announced that the Commanders announced the promotion of Juan Castillo to the role of game coordinator, Randy Jordan to the role of senior offensive assistant / running backs coach, and Travell Wharton to the role of offensive line coach. Oh, and Tom Storm to the role of tight ends coach. Okay, so this is a bunch of coaches getting promoted. It's pretty cool. I heard something from not Terry McLaurin, but Jahan Dotson actually earlier today, where, you know, it's like interesting to see in practice now this year with the absence of their terrible ex-owner. I like to call him Zack Snyder. I don't know why. That's kind of offensive to Zack Snyder, but Mr. Snyder, Dan Snyder, the whole energy around the team has changed. Not just within the locker room, but within the actual fan base and the community as well. So we're talking about a couple hundred fans going out to practice. And we're talking those are like the diehard fans. They were the folks who probably didn't even want the team to change their name from Redskins. They were just going to support it no matter what, right? They didn't care. That said, this year, new ownership, and maybe it's not just about the new ownership, but it's also about just like the new vibe within this organization itself. And primarily, I like probably pretty much believe that it's got a lot to do with the new ownership. Sure, there are other factors involved as well, but there were a few, a couple thousand fans at practice for them, supporting, watching, cheering, while their young rookies and young team, young players kind of gelled in practice and got their bearings together, this being the Commanders. So I'm not saying I'm stoked about this team, but if we're talking about what their performance was last year, like I said, that whole division, the NFC East, got better, Commanders included, this year. So we'll see what happens with Terry McLaurin. I think there was a report today about him working back in practice to a limited fashion despite his toe. We're still watching that situation. But Jahan Dotson, you could probably play him this week. He's easily playable. If you need to flex him, don't feel afraid of doing that. I could see him popping off. I could see him getting like 6 catches for like 80 yards and a tutty. I think he could do that this week. So it's interesting. I'm going to just go through these headlines real quick, and then we can talk about matchups. So Eagles list 4 starting running backs on depth chart, including DeAndre Swift, 10 minutes ago. So the Philadelphia Eagles released an unofficial depth chart that listed Kenneth Gainwell, Rashad Penny, Boston Scott, and DeAndre Swift as co-starters ahead of the Sunday's Week 1 matchup against the New England Patriots. It's worth noting that the Eagles listed the running backs in alphabetical order by last name, hence Gainwell being placed first, etc., etc. So this also should come as no surprise considering the uncertainty around the Eagles' backfield this offseason. It makes the most sense for Swift to operate as the primary pass-catching option / home run hitter, while Penny takes early down and goal line work, which gives Gainwell the change of pace and 2-minute drill role. We should get more clarity on the workload split over the first month of the season, but all 3 backs figure to get meaningful touches in what should be one of the NFL's premier offenses once again. It could be a headache for fantasy managers in the early going, but these situations tend to work themselves out. Thanks, John Matheson and Zach Berman. So this is why I think a lot of people were low on these backs specifically this year. I haven't seen a lot of Rashad Penny. I haven't seen a lot of Kenneth Gainwell. I've seen people go on DeAndre Swift, but he's not going in super high rounds as if he's the lead back on a premier offense in the NFL, right? And so we also talk about the Jalen Hurts factor, where he's a pretty hardcore rushing quarterback, so he's going to take a lot of either those rushing yards and carries, or also those goal line looks that turn into touchdowns, which really are like, the bread and butter for a lot of running backs in terms of their fantasy value, right? So it's kind of a mess there. Rashad Penny, if you've stashed him, like I don't know if Kenneth Gainwell or Boston Scott are even on fantasy teams. If they're on rosters, they shouldn't be, especially if you're in any kind of like 12-man, 10-person league, whatever. But maybe if you're in like a 16-team league, like sure, if you need to stash a Rashad Penny for the sake of depth, okay, you got to. But DeAndre Swift, as this as this article says, it's really kind of assumed that this, that role, the main pass catching back role, who will essentially be probably the most valuable fantasy wise, is going to DeAndre Swift. We saw that in Detroit last year. DeAndre Swift was excellent in Detroit last year in the passing game. Let's actually look at his stats. So I want to check out receptions. So by receptions, come on. He's not even top. Okay, so am I missing him? Am I not seeing him now? Ugh, this always happens. There's no way that he... Okay, they don't even have his stats. Come on, give me his stats from last year. Scoring, PPR. Please give me his stats. Really? Okay, well, I don't know why Fantasy Life is hating on me like that. I'm going to have to go to ESPN.com. We're going to have to look this up the old-fashioned way. So I'm going to look up DeAndre Swift. Come on. Why is all this shit so clunky right now? All right. I'm just going to go do it like this. All right. So let's look at his stats. 2022. His receiving in 2022, he had 48 receptions on 70 targets on 389 yards. He averaged 8.1 yards per attempt, essentially, per catch. And he had 3 receiving touchdowns. So that's not bad. If we look over here with the stats that should have showed DeAndre Swift on them, receptions. So it looks like DeAndre Swift finished right around the top 15, top 12 for receptions last year. He had 48 catches. So just under Rachaad White, which is interesting. You didn't really notice probably Rachaad White get that many catches last year. I know I didn't. And only on 58 targets, so that's pretty efficient. But that's neither here nor there. It's weird that they don't have DeAndre Swift here. Come on, Fantasy Life. Get your shit together. Get your shit together. So, anyways, my point being, yes, DeAndre Swift will get worked into the pass game. Can you count on it? He's clearly, has a decent passing history. He's really never had below 46 catches per year since he's been in the league. He had that 62 catch year in 2021. I could see him definitely beating 48 catches this year, at least if that's how they want to utilize him, right? I mean, they traded for him, so they want to use him. And he's dynamic. Like, he's definitely solid in that respect. So we'll see. We'll see. They could definitely give him some carries too. It's not like he doesn't, but let's see. His carry total last year was the lowest in his entire career, and he even played more games than he played in the previous 2 seasons, yet he only had 99 carries, despite being way more efficient than the previous years. So I could see them giving him some rushing attempts as well, DeAndre Swift. I don't think it's just going to be Rashad Penny as the first, second down back, like this article is implying. So in that respect, that at least gives DeAndre Swift a little bit more opportunities. Maybe there's an opportunity for there for him to rip one off, get a home run or some shit like it's saying. But at the same time, like wouldn't super bank on that. They've got a lot of home run hitters on that team, and he's like the third best one basically. If we're putting like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith ahead of him. So, but that's still exciting. And hey, we've talked about it before. The Eagles' schedule is tough this year. They're gonna have to play their starters all game long. It sounds crazy to say that, right? But last year, it was pretty common for them to not be playing starters, like in the back half of the second half, third, fourth quarter, right? So this year, they're probably going to have to play their starters more, clearly, because they're going to be in closer games. And so that just means more opportunities for everybody. Anyways, moving on. Jamison Crowder meets with the Commanders. Free agent wide receiver Jamison Crowder met with the Washington Commanders on Tuesday, according to beat writer Nikki Javala. Sorry, Nikki, that's terrible. I feel bad. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that next time. Crowder was originally drafted by Washington in 2015, fourth round, and put together some solid seasons in D.C. before moving to the Jets. Curtis Samuel is the Commanders' starting slot receiver, so even if the team were to sign Crowder, it would just be for depth purposes. The veteran wide receiver has compiled 4,600 yards on 415 catches to go along with 28 receiving touchdowns over his 8-year career. Most recently, he was released by the Giants last week, and before that, he appeared in just 4 games with the Bills last season. Thanks, John and Nikki. So, this is just depth. I don't know if we really want to talk about this much. Yeah, Jamison Crowder, we know what he can do. He's a decent slot receiver. We saw those stats. Pretty efficient. 28 receiving touchdowns. It's not nothing. So if he gets on this team, clearly they're worried about maybe Terry McLaurin's health or some other folks' health on that team. He might get worked in this year. Who knows? It's nothing to be concerned about right now. I wouldn't go out and scramble to grab Jamison Crowder, but keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye on that. Zane Gonzalez released by the 49ers. Okay. Kadarius Toney limited again on Tuesday. This is interesting. So Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver Kadarius Toney knee put in a second straight day of limited practice on Tuesday. Toney missed most of training camp and all of the preseason after having surgery to fix a torn meniscus in his knee, but he's expected to be available to play in the Week 1 regular season opener on Thursday night against the Detroit Lions. However, the 24-year-old oft-injured wideout will most likely be on... Damn, that's kind of shady, but not, he ain't wrong. Will most likely be on some sort of snap count on Thursday if he's active, which makes him an extremely risky fantasy lineup option to kick off this season. The Chiefs aren't going to risk Toney's long-term health even if the tight end Travis Kelce knee is unavailable, which we talked about earlier. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Sky Moore, and Justin Watson could see bigger roles in the passing game early on until Toney gets up to speed. So, yeah, obviously, MVS probably on waiver wires right now. If you need a plug and play for whatever reason, maybe you're the person who drafted like 4 RBs in the first round and your wide receiver depth is super, super limited. I'm thinking of the most ridiculous scenarios I possibly can because there's no possible way in any 12 to 10 person league should Marquez Valdes-Scantling being on somebody's starting lineup unless you're already in a desperate situation. So unless you like failed to draft receivers that you can count on right away because you went maybe Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Cooper Kupp, and like all of these guys that are essentially early round picks that aren't maybe there or receivers at all, then sure, I could see Marquez Valdes-Scantling being somebody that you just desperately pick up. But there are other guys that I'd probably pick up before Marquez Valdes-Scantling if I'm trying to plug and play somebody this week, namely Josh Palmer from the Chargers. He's literally a starter. I don't know why people didn't even draft him. I actually realized this and scooped him up in like half my leagues because I was just like, yeah, if he pops off, which he very well may, Justin Herbert's going to spread that ball around. Justin Herbert, I honestly, I'm just going to call this now. I could see him winning MVP this year. I know a lot of people were like, it's Joe Burrow's year, and I'd love for that to be the case because that means a great season for the Bengals. But frankly, I don't know. It's a little weird. The way this season's starting is a little wonky for Joe, and it's a lot smoother for Justin Herbert. And so not just because of that, but also I think Justin Herbert's like poised to take a step forward. He's kind of I would like to think that Justin Herbert is sitting there looking at all of the young, talented quarterbacks in his conference, the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes, the Joe Burrows, even across the conference over there in the NFC, like the Justin Fields, or sorry, Jalen Hurts, who just went to the Super Bowl. He's looking at all these dudes, and he's like, I just got paid, but that's not going to really satisfy me. Yeah, I'm sure he's fine with that money, stoked about it, matter of fact. But he's still motivated more than ever when he's talking about, how am I going to make my mark on the NFL? Came out hot rookie season. I think he won Rookie of the Year that year, Offensive Rookie of the Year. So we know he's a gangster, right? Like, Justin Herbert is a baller, and he got paid a shit ton. So all that said, he is like a freaking spring that has been cocked and loaded and ready to just go, man. Like, I think Justin Herbert's really going to pop off this year, and he's going to come out of the gate swinging, and that translates to similarly to what we've seen in Kansas City, where Patrick Mahomes just lets everybody eat. And even dudes like Pringle are eating on any random night, right? Pringle's not even there anymore, but a couple years back, Pringle was just some no-name rando, and he was feasting on that team. So I think Justin Herbert is going to sling it to a lot of dudes on the squad, and Josh Palmer is literally a starting receiver. So why are we ignoring him? And we've seen him play well. He didn't just show up last year and not do anything in the absence of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. He played very well during that stretch while they were both gone. They were both like missing games on and off. So anyways, go pick him up. Go pick up Josh Palmer. He's literally someone that you can, instead of like MVS, like I said, rather play Josh Palmer if he's still there. To finish up this particular story, though, Sky Moore, sure, plug him in. I don't know if he's super trustworthy. He's probably the most trustworthy person on the squad, definitely more so than MVS. That's why you drafted him higher than any of those other guys. If you have to play Sky Moore, be very, just don't expect much, right? Just don't expect much. He could very well pop off for like 20 plus points. He can get you like 6 to 8 catches, right? And maybe get over 100 yards. He's explosive. He could bring in a touchdown. He could literally go deep for a touchdown or two, right? Like, depends on how they utilize him. If they want him to be that Tyreek, archetype type of wide receiver. So, because they're looking for somebody to be that replacement. They still haven't found that weapon. I'm going to bring this guy's name up. I'm glad they brought his name up. It kind of was implied maybe with the absence of both Travis and Tony, but thank goodness they actually talked about this guy. Justin Watson, sneaky play today, or sneaky play this week. I'm actually going to drop him in a couple of DFS lineups as because he's super cheap, super value play. He's the cheapest chief. I think his DraftKings salary is like, for Showdown is sub 2K. Maybe it's like right around 2K. So go slot him into your DraftKings lineups this week. Thank me later. Anyways, moving on. That's Kadarius Toney, limited. We alluded to this already. Terry McLaurin, Washington Commanders wide receiver, still uncertain for this week. His toe is progressing from his turf toe situation, but he's still considered day-to-day according to sources. There's hope that he can play in week 1 of the regular season opener against the Arizona Cardinals, but his status remains unclear. Man, this sucks so bad. This was like such a sick matchup for him too. That's why I think Jahan Dotson's going to just eat this week. Like, Jahan Dotson's about to go off. And even if Terry's on the field, we've seen Terry fight through injuries before, play through them, be on the field when his team needed him, even in situations where it's not like they were competitive in season long or anything like that. Like, they weren't going to the playoffs those years. But he still hung out and toughed it out for his teammates and played through like ankle tweaks and even like, I think, a hamstring strain at one point. I could be mistaken about that one though. But regardless, Terry has, if he thinks his body can handle it, if he thinks that toe can go, he'll be out there. But kind of the point that I was making was he didn't do a whole lot when he did fight through those injuries. He was still targeted a bunch. I think they wanted to make it seem like he was, fully scary Terry, and he wasn't just like, not so scary Terry. I could have thought of something better. But that it's honestly a situation where he's still on the field, so you have to respect him in a way, right? The defense still has to respect him, so they'll probably put him out there. Jahan Dotson, slam dunk play this week. If you drafted him, good on you. He's definitely somebody I was targeting in my drafts as well. I think I only got him in one league because I probably projected him, or like was projecting out there to my league mates that I was so hot on him, or at the same time, just people are hot on him in general. Like we saw what he did last year with poor quarterback play. The Sam Howell train is leaving the building. People are on board, and Jahan Dotson is one of the biggest advocates of this dude, Sam Howell. So, whenever you hear stuff like that, you get a little, kind of like twinkle, like, okay, that's a positive thing. Clearly, every receiver should be their quarterback's biggest advocate and biggest fan, right? But not necessarily, especially in a situation like this where it's like they're both young. Sam Howell kind of hasn't done much. I think he's literally a rookie this year. Or no, sorry. I think he played towards the end of last year when they needed him to. I think he's a second-year player. But regardless, seeing the chemistry between him and Jahan Dotson and that friendship and sort of teammate building, right? That team building developed between them. I like that. I like that a lot. Like I said, I'm really high on Jahan Dotson this week. I was high on him going into this year. So we'll see. But I could definitely see him balling out this week against Cardinals, just eating all day long. We talked about the Travis Kelce thing. Damn, there's so many headlines. So that's like what's crazy. I literally was saying every platform had this headline. I saw 10 different headlines within the hour of that happening today. So if you hadn't heard about it and you hadn't picked somebody up or you haven't made moves, go pick up those tight ends we talked about. Seriously. Sean Tucker, okay, Justin Watson could have a bigger role early on. So here we go. Adam Tyker, ESPN, Adam Tyker writes that based on how Kansas City Chiefs used their wide receivers in training camp this summer, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Sky Moore, Justin Watson will get. Oh, come on, you're going to be okay. We'll get the most playing time to open the year. Kadarius Toney, knee, missed all of camp. Yeah, right? Okay, blah, blah, blah. The Chiefs also have Richard James. Okay, 27-year-old Watson had only 15 receptions on 34 targets and 315 yards and 2 touchdowns in the 17 regular season games last year. We only had 5 starts, which was his first year last year. He could have a bigger role in the early going in. What? He could have a bigger role in the early going in 2023. But Rice and Ross are better upside targets in fantasy. Yeah. So, like I said, just don't go grab them in leagues. But for this game, for this week, drop them on your lineup. Drop them on your DFS lineup. Straight up. We talk about that too. Dameon Pierce to be involved in platoon. 7 hours ago, Houston Texans running back Dameon Pierce took over this team's featured back in week 2 in his rookie season last year and never looked back, finishing with 939 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns last season. However, the addition of Devin Singletary, who had 819 yards and 5 touchdowns for the Buffalo Bills in 2022, it could mean a lighter workload for Pierce. He should start, but the Athletic's Mike Jones writes that it appears as if the Texans plan on going with a platoon backfield with Pierce and Singletary. Jones doesn't think it will be wise to rely on Pierce as your RB1 in fantasy football. Okay, so this is 7 hours ago. So it's interesting that this is coming out 7 hours ago. We could have speculated this back in the offseason when they acquired Singletary, we could have definitely put two and two together and say, and some people did, which is also why Dameon Pierce isn't like a second round pick, right? Or even a first round pick for that matter. Which, if this was his backfield, if this team was maybe a little bit better, he's talented enough and young enough, and he has that volume to where he could have easily been like a top 5 running back, essentially top 10 at least. I mean, he was drafted as like a top 12, right? So Dameon Pierce is somebody who people are expecting. I mean, clearly this person right here, Keith Hernandez and Mike Jones specifically is stating that he's not so sure that you should rely on Dameon Pierce. I would take that with a grain of salt. We've heard other reports of Dameon Pierce being locked into that lead role. They want him to run angrier and harder this year. He's an angry runner. We heard his coaches talk about him. They love the way he runs the football. So do I think Devin Singletary is just going to come in and just be like, oh yeah, I'm going to threaten Dameon Pierce in a quote-unquote platoon-style role, you know, where we're sharing this backfield? I don't see that happening at all. If anything, it's like Pierce is the platoon leader, and Devin Singletary is like the cadet who just comes in and fills in those kind of like wherever the platoon leader says he should or needs him to help out, right? I don't see this as being a big deal. If you have Dameon Pierce, you're fine. Dameon Pierce is much more talented than Devin Singletary. Yeah, sure, Devin Singletary had those 5 touchdowns and those 819 yards last year for the Bills. And that was still but you know, that's despite being on a team where the main running back on that team is their quarterback, Josh Allen. So I don't think Devin Singletary is going to come in and just even repeat what he did last year. I don't even think they want him to do that. You know, I don't think they want him to, or nor need him to. So I would be worried if you have Devin Singletary and you were trying to bank on him to be anything for your team. He's not even flex worthy. I don't even think he's rosterable in my mind right now, unless you just want to like have him because you have Dameon Pierce. You want that insurance, which handcuffs are kind of old hat. Like nobody really does handcuffs anymore unless they're situational, like maybe Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook. That's a reasonable handcuff, as well as maybe the Jamal Williams, Alvin Kamara, or Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller. Like those are decent handcuffs. In fact, I have one of those pairs in one of my leagues. I have the Kamara, Kendre Miller handcuff. So handcuffs aren't necessarily outlawed or, you know, completely old-fashioned, but you don't see them as commonly as you used to. It's not, and it's also not even really as talked about in the fantasy community. You know, you used to hear like, oh, handcuff your running backs, handcuff. I was like, no, now it really doesn't matter because there are no real workhorse running backs. The only reason why you wanted to handcuff a guy was because that role was transferable, right? Like you would hope that if your main guy goes down, that role that he had goes straight to that handcuffed player, right? He's going to step right into it, similar to like the Alexander Madison when James Cook would go down or something like that, or not James Cook, Dalvin Cook would go down or something like that. So it's not so common anymore because there aren't so many situations where you have those workhorse lead featured backs. It's more these platoons, running back by committee situations. So yeah. Anyways, my point is, don't be afraid of Dameon Pierce. In fact, if you're reading this and you're worried about Dameon Pierce, hit me up. If you're in any of my leagues, let me know. I'll trade for Dameon Pierce right now. I'll give you a decent deal too. I'll give you a good deal. But I would be more than happy to have that dude on my team. I didn't get to draft him in a lot of my leagues just because the timing and my draft position. I had some pretty crappy draft positions this year, but you know, we're not going to complain about that. I still feel like I drafted pretty well, but I didn't get any Dameon Pierce. But I'm willing to trade for him. So let me know. Holla at your boy. Anyways, moving on to the Lions here. So David Montgomery expected to take over goal line carries. We theorized this there was a little conversation regarding this. Obviously, that was kind of the expected role for David Montgomery, especially since that's what his role was last year for the Bears, or at least prior years with the Bears. Justin Fields is the Bears' primary goal line back now. So it's good that he's moved on and is now in Detroit and has this opportunity to be essentially what Jamal Williams was for the Lions last year. And we all know what happened with Jamal Williams. Well, Jamal Williams scored like 16 touchdowns. I mean, the Lions were just handing that guy the ball like every single time they were in the red zone. Like they were like, second and goal, hand it off to Jamal Williams. Third and goal, hand it off to Jamal Williams. Like, it didn't matter. They just literally wanted that man to score the touchdown, which I get it. I freaking love Jamal Williams. He's an infectious personality. He's such an awesome person. And maybe that's just because I'm a anime lover too. But man, that guy's an entertaining mofo. That guy's an awesome dude. So, anyways, that's what David Montgomery is expected to do. And that's what we were thinking when we saw this deal happen over the offseason. So anyways, I'll read the article. The Detroit Lions gave running back David Montgomery a 3-year, $18 million deal this offseason. So about $6 million a year if you do the math. But they took rookie Jahmyr Gibbs with the 12th overall pick in the draft, which is fine. The Athletic's Colton Pouncey writes that Montgomery is expected to take over the goal line carries in one of the league's best offenses, while Gibbs is expected to play some slot receiver in addition to running back. If Gibbs stays healthy, he has the potential to develop into a fantasy star that DeAndre Swift never became due to injuries. Both Gibbs and Montgomery have standalone fantasy appeal on a weekly basis in this new and improved Lions offense, with the youngster Gibbs having the higher upside, especially in PPR leagues. Thanks, Keith Hernandez and Colton Pouncey. So we've said it. We've said it all. And this article kind of like reinforces that. They're both fantasy relevant. Similar to how DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams were both fantasy relevant last year. Oddly enough, DeAndre Swift seemed like the more valuable one, maybe on paper or going into the year. And Jamal Williams was a steal in drafts. And he ended up getting 16 touchdowns. So, similarly here, Jahmyr Gibbs, granted, he is the person who even I'm projecting to be more fantasy relevant just based off of finish, how many points he finishes the year with, how many points he scores per game, even maybe yardage, like total yardage. I could definitely see that being all higher than David Montgomery. David Montgomery will probably score like 10 touchdowns this year, though. Like, I could easily see that happening. I don't think he's going to get maybe more than 500 rushing yards, though, for the season. But still, like, that's a reasonable running back to have on your team if you need to flex, or even like an RB2, fringe RB2, maybe like RB3 if you're in a 3 RB league. So go get these guys. I mean, go trade for them if you're high on them. I love Jahmyr Gibbs. Probably going to try to trade for him. I already have him in 2 leagues. Probably going to try to trade for him in another league before he pops off and is just unobtainable. And just people are going to, But if people are worried about David Montgomery and you can steal him for free, or rather not steal him for free, but, get like a nice little value trade off for him, or maybe something that helps both teams. Like if the David Montgomery owner is a little worried that maybe they've made a mistake and they think that there's no possible way he performs at the level that they need him to, or whatever, and they can't count on him on a week-to-week basis, go target David Montgomery in a trade. Maybe throw a low ball offer, see what the counter trade offer is, and if it works out, if you feel like you're able to stomach the David Montgomery player on your team, in your roster, in your starting roster, then yeah, go for it. But he's a great depth pick. If you have him as depth, you're happy. Okay, Denver. This is bad news if you are a Javonte person. We'll just read it. Javonte Williams could have a lesser role in the first month. 7 hours ago, Denver Broncos third-year running back Javonte Williams' knee impressed coaches and teammates with a speedy recovery after he tore his ACL and suffered other ligament damage in Week 4 last October. He looked sharp in training camp and his lone preseason appearance. However, the Athletics' Nick Kosmider, I should just stop trying to pronounce these names, writes that it may be fair to peg Williams for a lesser role during the first month of the season as he continues to find his rhythm. It makes Samaje Perine a solid late-round pickup in fantasy drafts, and new head coach Sean Payton has always been one to rotate RBs in the backfield. Williams' ADP this draft season slowly rose as he looked good during his recovery, but fantasy managers shouldn't expect too much too soon from him this year. Thanks, Keith and Nick. So, I've been off Javonte all offseason. The little that we've discussed of him, I've been pretty, I wouldn't say negative, but I've been less than neutral. So that kind of inversely makes Samaje the targetable running back in that backfield. I agree with this article. I think clearly there's some reasons to be hesitant with Javonte, at least for the early weeks. That means Samaje is primed for a very valuable role early on. Now, I don't know how good this team's going to be. I've been off all Broncos. Even with the value that Samaje brings as a lower level kind of late round draft, basically he might even be on a bunch of waiver wires right now. Go check your waiver wires. Just drop him on your team. Seriously, right now. Like, if you're watching and you want to make sure that Samaje is on a team, go check, because if he's not, you got to scoop him up. Just to have. Like, you can't just let somebody else have him, because somebody else is going to be able to plug and play Samaje Perine in a pinch. Maybe it's the Alvin Kamara owner. Maybe it's the Breece Hall owner. Maybe it's the, Javonte Williams owner who let Samaje slide and nobody drafted him for some reason, right? Like, so if Samaje's on your waiver wire, which at this point, I don't know if he should be, it depends on the league that you're in and how deep it is, but go check. Just go check. Regardless, sucks for Javonte Williams owners. I think if you have Javonte Williams, you drafted him in like the 4th or 5th round, and this is not encouraging yet. You're hoping that Javonte can be somebody who outperforms that ADP when he does come back and kind of like takes over this backfield. It's a high scoring offense behind Sean Payton and that, his offensive mind, right? We saw how successful he's had multiple backs be in fantasy, in New Orleans, right? Back when he was coaching them with Drew Brees. So he can do it. We'll see. All right. I don't know if I'm encouraged by this. This is like 70% positive, but there's like an underlying maybe negative foil here, and maybe that's just me reading into it a little too much. I like to do that. So I tend to do that sometimes, not that I enjoy it, but I tend to read into things a little bit. That's actually part of what makes my fantasy methods a little zany and out there, but can pay off sometimes. So Tony Pollard expected to see a career high in touches. The big question this year is, will the Dallas Cowboys keep running back Tony Pollard's usage the same as it has been in previous years in an effort to maintain his production? Or will they put more on his plate with Zeke gone? The Athletic's Sahad Yusuf believes that the end result will be something in the middle, which should equate to a new career high in touches for Pollard, but not as many as Elliott saw when he was at the height of his career in Dallas. Okay, so tempered expectations a little bit. That's good. Since the Cowboys took Pollard in the 4th round in 2019, his usage has revolved. Jesus, I can't even speak right now. Has revolved around supplementing Elliott. The 26-year-old is also coming off a significant ankle injury, but he appears to be fully and should be Dallas's unquestioned lead back. So he appears to be fully healthy, okay, and should be Dallas's unquestioned lead back in 2023, making him a mid-range RB1 in fantasy. Thanks, Keith and Saad. So I've been kind of spouting this nonsense. I won't call it nonsense. It's definitely for a reason, right? Like, I've been pretty skeptical of Tony Pollard being drafted as high as he's been. Not because he's not talented, not because maybe this team won't be good. I think he'll get good usage, right? Like, they want him to. I just don't know if at that ADP, is he really going to perform how you drafted him? I don't know. I mean, this is really just a coin flip, right? I mean, he absolutely could. He's talented. He's awesome. I had him on my team last year. I actually, he was one of my main reasons why I was, the top team in my league. That said, I got him in like the 6th or 7th round. I think I even reached for him because he was going like in the 7th or 8th round, or even maybe a little later in some leagues. But I grabbed him in the 6th round. I maybe drafted him a little higher than somebody else normally would have, but I felt convinced that he was going to be the better back in Dallas. And sure enough, that's kind of how it panned out. And so he'll be fine. And I believe in Zeke, or I believe in Pollard. But y'all, he went really high. Too high for me. Way too high. So that's that. Maybe that's just copium for me. I'm just like, damn it. I hope Pollard doesn't pop off as hard as he's like primed to, or people are thinking he will, because then I'll feel bad for not picking him up in literally any leagues. So, all right, here's Athletics. Zach Jackson believes that Nick Chubb is still a top fantasy back. And he's durable and explosive. Okay, Cleveland is going to be a more open offense and will use quarterback Deshaun Watson as a runner, but it's unlikely that they're going to forget about Chubb and their experienced, highly paid offensive line. Chubb is also in line for more passing game work with Kareem Hunt gone and plenty of uncertainty behind him. Even if the Browns aren't a run-first and run-second offense, Jackson thinks Chubb is still going to get plenty of opportunities. In an NFL with most teams using committee backfield approaches, Chubb is easily a top 5 fantasy RB. Keith Hernandez and Zach Jackson both on that story. So I've been talking about Chubb all offseason. I've been super high on Chubb in all of my drafts. I've been picking him up way higher than his ADP in the first round. I've just been on the Chubb bandwagon. I think he could easily finish as a top 3, top 2 RB this year. I don't even know who would finish above him in that scenario. Maybe someone like an Austin Eckler, or, if Bijan just decides to go nuclear like people are expecting him to. I don't know, but Chubb is firmly in that position. Like, I don't see Derrick Henry overtaking Chubb. I don't see CMC, because that team just has so many weapons. Like, Chubb is going to be the engine to this machine that is the offensive unit on the Browns. And we've seen him ball out in the past. He's just so reliable, right? He's just so reliable. I'm knocking on some wood right now because I really do believe that just his work ethic and how he takes care of his body is second to none. Like Saquon and him are two of my favorite running backs for that reason alone, is that they just have incredible work ethics and they just seem like decent dudes. Saquon is frankly was being taken advantage of by the Giants organization. I know they gave him a little bit extra cash, but y'all should have paid that man. I mean, he's like that whole team for you guys, but that's neither here nor there. Chubb, clearly this dude, Zach Jackson, is talking about him being his, favorite, or one of his favorite top fantasy running back options this year. So, I mean, the drafts are over. Like, we're talking about drafts as if they're in the rearview mirror, because they should be. I mean, I'm sure there are a couple people that are still drafting maybe last minute, leagues and stuff. But regardless, like, if you've got Nick Chubb on your squad, you're excited about it. And you can't wait for this matchup this weekend against the Bengals. Bengals defense is tough. Chubb will have his work cut out for him. The whole Browns team will this week, and even just this year, because it's a tough division. So we'll see if they're competitive in that division at all. I think they're slotted to finish third in that division, based off Vegas odds. So, and yeah, anyways, Nick Chubb's going to be a big part of that. Moving on. Not much certainty in Cincinnati behind Joe Mixon. So this is a little different than what we've been hearing all offseason. We've really only heard things from Cincinnati regarding this backfield about how Joe Mixon, it's his job, and there's really nobody else there, right? They got rid of Samaje Perine, who was amazing with his sort of change of pace duties when he was here in Cincinnati. I say here, but there in Cincinnati last year. And it looks like maybe they want to work in some more backs behind Joe, despite Joe Mixon essentially having restructured his deal to be a little bit more team friendly. They opened up some cap space. like I said, Samaje Perine's gone, so maybe the expectation was, oh yeah, Joe Mixon is literally just going to have a more sort of voluminous role there, right? Or at least he'll have more volume or more opportunities, more touches, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, Joe Mixon pretty much like capped out last year in terms of touches. Like he had a shit ton of touches last year. He had 210 rushing attempts. You know what I mean? And let's see how many targets he had. He had 210 rushing attempts, which is not nearly as much as some of the other people out there, like Derrick Henry, obviously Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb even had 302. Saquon, all these guys had more touches. And Joe Mixon had 60 catches, which is quite a bit, and 440 receiving yards. So he actually had like a top 5, top 6 when you talk about catches in the league last year for a running back. So that's really what we're hoping to see from him. And that's really where Samaje Perine stepped in as well last year when Joe Mixon was hurt. Joe Mixon missed 3 games, and there were a couple games where he was even banged up. I think he might have like missed half a game because he got injured during that game, and so Samaje came in and stepped in and performed spectacularly. So this is just, like I said, contradictory to what we've heard all offseason. The fact that this is coming out now is not necessarily concerning. Yes, it's concerning for Mixon owners. I'm not a Mixon owner. I didn't draft any Mixon. I think I was just like eerily, I mean, like, we know what my stance is on guys like Mixon. That said, I still think he was a good pickup this year and was being underdrafted despite him being gone, you know, taking like the 3rd, 4th round. But now it seems like whatever risk was baked into his ADP is now fully being realized. So these reports, I'll read the article. Cincinnati Bengals running back Chris Evans looked to have won the 3rd down role in training camp. But head coach Zach Taylor said last week he was still in competition with Travion Williams, who has returned from an ankle injury. It's a valuable spot on the roster behind starter Joe Mixon, but the Athletics' Paul Denner Jr. thinks it's a spot that could change during the season, and there's not much certainty beyond Evans' encouraging camp. Rookie Chase Brown is intriguing with his development in the passing game, but he'll likely be a non-factor on passing downs, barring an injury. Denner expects Mixon to hold down the majority of touches on early downs in 2023 unless he struggles early on. Evans is your best bet as a handcuff to Mixon, but that could change at some point this year. All right, so Keith and Paul just helped us out with that one, with that story. Thanks, guys. So, like I said, I mean, this is a little bit, it's weird that this headline says not much certainty in Cincinnati behind Joe Mixon, but then this article essentially goes on to say there's no certainty with anyone behind Mixon. So, I'm dumb. Wow, I read this so backwards. Okay. Never mind. This is exactly what we've been hearing all offseason. Thank you so much, Paul Denner Jr., for confirming this for us. Joe Mixon is the guy in this backfield. There's nobody else you need to worry about. All right, glad we figured that one out. That was a close one. Y'all. Thank goodness we got that. Holy cow, that was going to be so embarrassing. It was. Okay, anyways, so let's move on. Bucs backfield, a committee behind Rachaad White. Tampa Bay Buccaneers back Rachaad White is the team's lead back entering the 2023 regular season, but it's looking like a committee behind him between Chase Edmonds, Keyshawn Vaughn, and rookie Sean Tucker. Running backs coach Skip Peete has frequently rotated multiple backs at his other NFL stops. Chase, I know, can do some of the pass stuff where I feel like Sneak and Sean have a lot of value. So I think they call Keyshawn Vaughn or Chase Edmonds Sneak. Keyshawn Vaughn Sneak. I honestly have no idea who Sneak is. But also does Chase. Okay, so straight up, Rachaad White, owners, you're happy about this, I guess, maybe? Like, you're just happy that at least there's nobody that you're afraid of. Like, I'm not afraid of Chase Edmonds. I'm not really afraid of Keyshawn Vaughn. And we'll see about Sean Tucker. But if you're a Rachaad White owner, like, you drafted him pretty low anyways, and you're fine with this report. So Cowboys expect Dak Prescott to be around a long time. I don't even want to read this article. I think the drama between Dak Prescott and Dallas is something that people are making a lot of bluster about. But, Yeah, they did trade for Trey Lance. I'm not worried about the Trey Lance thing at all. Trey Lance is not somebody who should be looked at as capable of taking that job from Dak, even though Dak did play poorly last year and people think maybe Dak's on the hot seat or something like that. I don't know. I think that's just... I'm not worried about it. Jahmyr Gibbs could function as a primary downfield receiving threat. So this is kind of cool, right? Like, in Detroit, they're messing. Okay, I saw read the article. So Detroit Lions rookie running back Jahmyr Gibbs could be used as the team's primary downfield pass catching threat early this season, according to Tim Twentyman. That's a sick name of Lions.com. Twentyman. Detroit is without Jameson Williams suspension, and DJ Chark Jr. is now in Carolina, leaving a hole for vertical threats. Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson recently noted that vertical threats don't have to be receivers, so that's one thing to watch out here for with Gibbs. I mean, I love that he's saying this, not just as a fantasy owner of Gibbs, but also just as like some subtle coach speak. It's like, all right, well, yeah, now you're going to have to game plan for Gibbs. You guys thought you didn't have to game plan for Gibbs, running downfield. I mean, we'll see how they actually utilize him this week. I mean, we're talking about Thursday night. That's coming up. Whew, I'm so excited for football, y'all. I'm so excited. Lions offensive coordinator, vertical threats for Gibbs. Yeah, expect to see the rookie used all over the field on Thursday night. He should be in fantasy lineups across the board, says Andrew Ball and Tim Twentyman. I think his DFS value is pretty reasonable right now, too. I'd lock him in to any DraftKings lineup you're doing. I might even say he's worth captaining, especially with news like this. Amon-Ra might not be 100%. Jahmyr Gibbs literally just might get like 10 targets this game. So, I don't know. I mean, figure it out. This Thursday night game is going to be pretty high scoring. The Kansas City Chiefs defense will not be able to stop Detroit. I'm just putting that out there right now. So Lions are going to eat. Kansas City Chiefs, theoretically, Super Bowl champs, should eat Patrick Mahomes, right? Even without Travis Kelce. That's going to be a little tough. They'll figure it out. Andy Reid is a brilliant dude. He'll figure it out. So anyways, that's going to be a fun game. Cannot wait for that. Wow. Really excited about that. Anyways, Jake Moody is kicking off to the side on Sunday night. All right, that's nothing crazy. We'll move on. Hot-handed approach in Indianapolis could benefit Evan Hull. Okay, so with Indianapolis, quickly before I talk about this. So going into this year, right now, post-draft, nobody's drafted anybody in the Colts backfield except maybe Jonathan Taylor. And even then, it was probably by accident. I'm talking to you, Rick. No, just kidding. But still, Jonathan Taylor is pretty much the only drafted Colts back. He's not even going to play for the first 4 weeks. So what's going to happen? Well, there's been speculation about Deion Jackson taking over the primary role here. Zach Moss obviously is coming back off that arm injury. He is expected to take a pretty big workload here when he gets back. Evan Hull is somebody I thought looked pretty solid in the preseason, even though he only had like a couple carries. But he ripped one off for 31 yards in that last game. So he looked pretty explosive just based off of the short sample size we saw from him. And if he's been looking good in these, practices leading up to this game this week, then, again, just based off of what this article is saying, he could end up benefiting from a hot hand approach. Nobody's saying for you to go get Evan Hull right now. I did, but that's only because I was hyped up on this is just what I had. This is what I do. That's why I am the person who makes 180 transactions each year, because I can't help myself for stupid stuff like this. But that said, I'll read this. With Indianapolis Colts running back Jonathan Taylor ankle on the PUP list, head coach Shane Steichen suggested that whoever has the hot hand will continue to receive work. This will be a running back by committee approach to begin the season. Second string runner Zach Moss' arm is still a question mark for week 1 as he recovers from a broken arm. Deion Jackson will likely get the start against Jacksonville, with Evan Hull mixing in. The rookie is the favorite to operate as the third down back, where he led college football in catches and receiving yards among running backs last season, which is pretty tight. With the Jaguars coming in as a 5-point road favorites, the Colts could be playing from behind with Hull in the backfield, says Andrew Ball and Joel A. Erickson. So honestly, nobody's saying that the Colts are even going to be relevant fantasy-wise. This is probably more of like a DFS play. Evan Hull is dirt cheap when we're talking about, running backs. It's probably like literally the minimum salary on whatever platform you're talking about, maybe a couple hundred over the minimum salary. So he's definitely a DFS play, potential sneaky DFS play if he rips one off because he can. That's your dart, right? That's your dart throw. If he cashes in, that's a milli maker right there potentially. So I will be throwing Evan Hull into a couple DFS lineups, but I'm not grabbing him in leagues, trying to count on him this week for anything. Maybe you throw him on your bench because you think he could end up taking this job and being the main back because he is the quote-unquote hot hand and just never kind of stops being hot for the rest of the season. I mean, we've seen that happen. Like Zach Stacy years back on the Rams, he did that. There are other guys that I kind of can't really think of. Oh, Alvin Kamara is probably the best example of this. Straight up just took that job. So, and is still a dynamic back. I'm like high on Alvin Kamara this year as well, despite the suspension. So if Evan Hull is going to be that, we could be in for quite the wild ride with this guy. But I don't know if he's capable. I mean, he's clearly, he led college football in catches and receiving yards among running backs last season. That's incredible. So I'm like at least keeping my eye on Evan Hull and thinking to myself, I'm stashing him for the hope that he turns into literally like an Alvin Kamara. That's it. Like that's best case scenario. But like we're talking about a team that is much worse than what the Saints were when Alvin Kamara was on that team as a rookie when he broke out. So I'm not saying that's like going to happen. It'll probably happen in garbage time if ever. But that's what you're looking for there. 10 hours ago, all signs point to Joe Burrow playing in week 1. So we read another article just recently about this particular situation that was kind of a little more neutral, but this seems a little bit more optimistic. So let's see what this one says. Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow calf appears to be ready to play against the Cleveland Browns on Sunday, according to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. It's a little more optimistic than head coach Zach Taylor calling the signal caller day-to-day earlier this week. We'll get more clarity when Cincinnati releases the first injury report of the season on Wednesday. If Burrow plays, he'll be a QB1 for fantasy managers. Jack Browning is serving as the backup for Bengals to begin the season. So thanks, Andrew Ball and Ian Rappaport, for that story. So, oh man, I just have a backup plan. I've said this earlier. If you have Joe Burrow, I have Joe Burrow in 2 leagues. I've already got backup plans for both situations. If for some reason Joe Burrow is not playing this week, it's looking like a 70-30% chance. 70% he plays, 30% maybe he doesn't. Obviously, there's still a chance that for whatever reason, just come Sunday morning, he's a healthy scratch, and they're like, yeah, sorry, like we're gonna just take it easy on Joe Burrow. We'll let Jack Browning handle the Browns. Maybe that's literally I don't know. I'm not trying to be funny, but like that could just literally end up being the scenario. So keep an eye on it. We'll keep an eye on that. Have a backup plan though. Go pick up a quarterback. Go see who people dropped or see who people left out in their drafts. If Jared Goff's still around for some reason, if Geno Smith's still around for some reason, even maybe a Danny Dimes. I doubt any of those guys are available, but just go check because they're more than sufficient backups for you if for whatever reason Joey B cannot go this week. If you're looking at anybody other than that, it's pretty desperate times at that point. So this is interesting. Taysom Hill listed as quarterback for week 1. New Orleans Saints quarterback / tight end Taysom Hill has officially been listed as a quarterback heading into week 1. So I don't care about this. Like straight up, like we've seen Taysom Hill be listed as quarterback. Like which one is it? I don't care at this point. He's a football player. He's going to do stuff sometimes and he's not going to do stuff other times. He's never really somebody who is fantasy relevant. If you get lucky in DFS, dropping him in a lineup, that 1 week where he drops like 30 points, good on you. You're a fortune teller. Please teach me your secrets. But other than that, like this situation with Taysom Hill, I could care less, straight up. This is the last article we'll read until we move on to the schedule breakdown real quick, and then we'll call it. But DJ Reed believes Jets defense will be historically good this season. So 22 hours ago, New York Jets cornerback DJ Reed believes that this season's iteration of their defense can be the best in the league and one of the best in NFL history. Reed said, "I think we have the potential to be the best defense in the NFL. Honestly, I think we could be historical, not just the best defense in the league." He proceeded to say that he thinks the Jets defense can be on the level of the 1985-1986 Chicago Bears and the Legion of Boom Seahawks squad. Yeah, that's putting yourself pretty up there. I mean, we'll see. I actually could see that potentially, though. This offseason has provided the most hype for the Jets since the earlier days of Rex Ryan's tenure, with Darrelle Revis as the headliner on that defense. The defense/special teams unit is currently ranked in the top 5 in the league for fantasy projections, but they also have one of the toughest schedules this year. Thanks, Alex Young and Alex Fishbein. So, yeah, I think that the only relevant thing here is, like, people drafted this defense probably as a top 3 defense off the board among maybe the 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. Those are probably the top 3 defenses you saw leaving your draft, leaving the board in your draft. So, yeah, of course, they're expected to ball out. Like, great. That said, I mean, these are pretty high expectations, and they're in a pretty tough division as it is. Like, Miami's going to sling the thing, with Tyreek and Tua and Waddle. They still have Josh Allen there, right? Even though I've been super cold on the Bills, I don't think they're just going to disappear and go quietly into that night, right? Like, they're still going to want to throw the ball all over the field with Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Shakir and them boys, right? Dalton Kincaid, they want to get him worked in somehow eventually this year. So that division's tough. There's a lot of high explosive octane offenses there, and we'll see if they can clamp down on them. I mean, I'm really excited to see how this turns out. I wasn't bold enough to go grab them. I'm not somebody who drafts fantasy defenses really at all. I'll just kind of leave that position open and then stream for the entire season. But if you drafted the Jets, you're probably just locking them in. You're probably stoked about them every week in, week out. I would say DFS, we'll talk about this, on Sundays for DFS or whenever they play. But definitely an awesome matchup. They'll probably be super expensive every single week, but it's probably going to be one of those situations where you just have to play the Jets defense every single week. But anyways, so that was the news for today. We'll cover a couple random headlines that kind of jumped out to me, and then we'll talk about the matchups for this week. We'll talk about a couple of them at least. So this story just keeps getting weirder and weirder to me, at least this Denver situation. I have always kind of just said, hey, Russell Wilson is a weird dude. Just let him be weird, man. Like, as long as he's performing well on the field, just let him do his thing. Just let him do his thing. He's let's ride Broncos country. He's literally just like, there's no other man out there like Russell Wilson. I'm just put it out there like that. I'm not trying to be mean. He's a unique guy. He's really unique. So when Broncos head coach Sean Payton tells Russell Wilson that he needs to focus less on Russell Inc., per report, which, he reminded Russ that he's not running for public office or whatever. This is kind of a snarky article, CBS. It's cute. Nice headline. But, yeah, let's read it. So the Denver Broncos have reason to be optimistic in 2023 after trading for Super Bowl winning head coach Sean Payton. He is challenged with fixing quarterback Russell Wilson, who has had the worst season of his career last year in 2022. The Broncos sent the Seattle Seahawks 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. Okay, I don't care about any of that. Blah, blah, blah. He played like shit. So this is what he says. How will Payton get Russ back on track? In recent NFL ESPN piece, Payton told Wilson he needs to focus less on Russell Inc. Will you fucking stop kissing all the babies? Payton said. You're not running for public office. According to reports, I mean, that's harsh, dude. That's harsh. According to public reports, Wilson did not exactly operate as your standard starting quarterback during his first season with Denver. Back in February, The Athletic reported that Wilson brought in a whole support staff apart from team employees. Wilson also reported that he had a workspace on a floor where players rarely were, an office where he had an open-door policy as if he were a coach. That's hilarious. Oh man, this is my first time hearing about this. Things are going to be different with Peyton in charge, and he has a reputation for getting the most out of his quarterbacks. Drew Brees, of course, led the New Orleans Saints to a championship. Jameis Winston went 5-2 as the starter before suffering a torn ACL in 2021, and Teddy Bridgewater went 5-0 in his 5 starts for the Saints back in 2019. With a player like Wilson, it's possible the Broncos could return to contending this year. No. I mean, yes, it's possible. But this, I can tell you right now, Russ does not like this. Russ is not stoked about this being a public story. And Sean Payton, why are you so public about this shit, man? Just say it behind closed doors. Tell him, don't be popping off to ESPN about this shit and letting them write a whole public piece about this. Bro, just let this man do him. If he wants to like LARP as a offensive coordinator or a head coach on the team and have his own separate office space so that players on the team can walk in and he has an open door policy where he feels like he can field questions during office hours or whatever, it may be, because maybe he's trying to give, younger players an opportunity to approach him who might feel afraid to doing so on the field during practice or some shit. I in front of coaches, I have no idea, man. Like, I have no idea. Just let Russ be Russ, though. Like, why are we talking about this in public? There's no reason to have this be a story, Sean. Sean Payton, just chill. Just chill, brother. You are actively tearing this relationship apart before it even starts. Like, you are literally blowing this whole thing up before the first game is even played, before the first snap has even been handed to the quarterback. What are you doing, Sean? All right, okay, I'll stop. All I'm saying, this isn't looking good for the Broncos. I hope Russ, is emotionally mature enough, I believe he might be, to just overlook this and be like, hey, Sean Payton, man, you're getting a little older, brother. Maybe this is just like your time off has maybe given you a little bit too much confidence to talk about these things in public. But you're back to coaching now, bro. Let's handle things in-house. Let's start doing things the way you probably would have done them and did do them back in New Orleans when you were winning championships with Drew Brees. So, anyways, moving on. Let's talk about this Lions-Chiefs matchup. Oh, what? Okay, cool. Whew. Okay, let's watch this game preview. Actually, we won't watch this game preview. We'll just talk about it. So, Detroit Lions, Kansas City Chiefs, season opener this Thursday. I'm excited. We already talked about how high I am on Jahmyr Gibbs in this game, how I could see David Montgomery potentially even getting 2 touchdowns this game, how I could see maybe Amon-Ra not coming out super hot out of the gates, but Jared Goff still distributing the ball pretty reasonably around. We've talked about how I think the Kansas City Chiefs will struggle in this game, especially with the absence of Travis Kelce. So I think that there's a lot to be had from this game from a fantasy standpoint. Obviously, there's a bunch of studs on both of these teams. If we're talking about Kansas City players who are sleepers potentially, I mean, you're locking in Sky Moore to your lineup. I think he's automatically someone you have to play at this point, especially with Travis Kelce potentially being not 100% or not even playing at all. We talked about Justin Watson being somebody. So I think this is a good matchup. This is a good matchup for fantasy and DFS specifically. I'm actually going to put up a list of players that I'm targeting for DFS before the game. So just on Thursday, we'll go over that, and that'll be like our actual game breakdown for this, because I'm just not realizing that I want to write some stuff down for these guys. This is a pretty big game. So, all right. Well, hour and a half. I think that's going to do it, y'all. I really appreciate the views, the watches, the lurks, all the stuff. Please keep coming back every single day. We're going to be here around 4 to 5 every single day talking about all this NFL news that's going on during the season. So, yeah, just keep tuning in. This is Game Time Ty. Appreciate the views. And like I said, have a good rest of your night, y'all. Peace.